everybody, this is Jack Hammer of the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. I cover the 49ers for the Inside the 49ers blog. Wanted to come on and answer some of your questions from the 49ers mailbag question that came through this week after the 49ers lost to the Rams. So there's a lot of different questions we're going to get into. Some of them you may have seen already, some of them you haven't. If you have specific questions you'd like to see, you can also throw them up over in the comment section. We'll get to those as well. So we will definitely have a lot of content for you today. Let's go ahead and really quick, just to start off. Hey, Karthik, great to have you on. Thanks for the question earlier today. I will try to pull that one up from Twitter as we get along to it, or you can throw it over here in the comment section and I'll answer it. But let's start off with a question that came up from the game on Sunday against the Rams. Could the 49ers have done anything better, or is 20 points a defensive victory against the Rams? And that was kind of based around the fact that the Rams were so successful with their passing attack, with the quick passes, and so on. And really, when you look at this game, I think one of the biggest issues that faced the 49ers on Sunday was their inability to get off the field on third down. The defense really struggled there, allowing the Rams to convert on 11 of 18 third down attempts, 6 of which came with 6 or more yards to go. So a lot of third and longs being converted there, and that allowed the Rams to really control the flow of the game. The Rams had 35 minutes of total offense, just slightly over that. They've done that now all 3 of their playoff games to get to the Super Bowl. And by them holding the ball so much, it limited the 49ers offense to only 50 offensive plays. And when that kind of stuff is happening, especially with this 49ers team, the way that they're constructed and the way that they go, especially with the quarterback situation they had, and just in general, even with the offensive line issues with Daniel Brunskill and Tom Compton over on the right side, and a hobbled Trent Williams over at left tackle, it really was going to force the 49ers to not be able to get into the game that they wanted to play. Plus, the Rams defense did a really good job of shutting down the 49ers run game. So those 2 things combined really were an issue. And I think, overall the defense played, if I was going to give the defense a grade, I'd probably say a C. I thought they played average. I mean, I understand the points given up, but there was one possession in particular late in the second quarter where the Rams had a big drop from Cooper Kupp across the middle, and then 2 or 3 plays later, they had a drop on a deep ball into the end zone by Ben Skoranek, drops a pass in the end zone when Jimmy Ward had no idea where the ball was. So there was a couple of things that helped them out along the way. And then you had the missed field goal following that. So the defense played fine, but they definitely left a lot to be desired with their play as well on Sunday. So it was definitely went both ways with that for the 49ers. The next question is around the offense, and in particular, their inability to move the ball late in the game. The one thing here with the 49ers is, they weren't able to move the ball in the last 12 minutes, just under 12 minutes, 11 something. They had the 9-yard run by Elijah Mitchell, and the rest of the game was negative yardage for the 49ers. They had a loss of 2 and then a stop for no gain. So if we look at that, really the Rams defense dominated this game at the line of scrimmage throughout. And then on top of that, you had Eric Weddle doing a fantastic job in run support from the secondary. He was pretty much a box defender throughout that game. And when you look at that stretch where you're talking about in the last 12 minutes, now you're looking at the second and 1 play after the long run by the 9-yard run by Mitchell, and Weddle beats a block by Trent Sherfield to drop Mitchell for a loss of 1 on that second 1 play. And then on the very next play, Rams defensive tackle Greg Gaines beats Daniel Brunskill to drop Kyle Juszczyk for no gain. So you get those 2 plays, and then after that, the Rams defensive line continue to dominate on the next possession. You have Aaron Donald beating Laken Tomlinson to get a hit on Garoppolo as he tries to throw to George Kittle. And then from that point, it's a mixture of the offensive line and Jimmy Garoppolo. That 2nd and 15, because they have the delay of game, Garoppolo drops back to pass. He has 3 receivers open. He has George Kittle open quick on an out. He has Brandon Ayuk cutting open over the middle, and then he also has Deebo Samuel running a little route out of the backfield, a little Texas-looking route. And Garoppolo doesn't throw the ball to any of those three. Instead of even choosing to step up through the pocket, which was open if he had done that, and taking off up the field for some yardage, he decides that he's going to bail out to his right, and he gets nearly picked off by Jalen Ramsey. So it was a group of things that went on there for the 49ers, but mostly what I would say is, or what I point to, is the offensive line was dominated in the second half. And I think that's definitely something that we need to look at moving forward. The offensive line, especially at right guard, needs to be upgraded. Left guard is a position as well that's going to have a might have a need there, because Laken Tomlinson is an unrestricted free agent. So it'll be interesting to see how they go about that. Real quick, jumping over to another topic. Before I jump over to the topic, let me get this off of here. We had a question from, he says, from Stutley, Cerebrum says, Jack, since the run game is a major part of the offense, Trey being under center, how much more effective will it be in your mind? The thing with Trey Lance is he's not so much of a runner as I think people like to think of him as. He's more of a pocket quarterback who has the ability to run when needed. And when he does run, he's going to be running primarily through in between the tackles. And I've talked a few times about this week already. When Trey Lance gets the ability to start here next year in 2022, I hope the 49ers come back and run a lot of the same offense that they've ran with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback. I just feel that if they just run their offense through Trey Lance, that they're going to get more big plays down the field, because he's going to take some of the shots that are open down the field that Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't even attempt to throw. And his running ability may play a role in helping that as well at times, when he is able to break the pocket and bootleg out and things like that. It's just a matter of him getting his rhythm and speed in the offense. But I think as time goes, and we saw this play out in the game against the Texans, that offense wasn't a whole lot different than what they, especially in the second half, when they were moving the ball after the first possession of the second half, they did a good job of just running their offense, and Trey Lance did a good job of executing it. So I think for that standpoint, just let Trey Lance come out and do what he does, and this team will be the best for it. And that kind of goes into this question here that was brought up. If you go back to that 2nd and 1, 3rd and 2, does Trey Lance pick that up? This was another question that was asked, and my answer to this is it's hard to say that he's going to. I would lean more towards saying no. And the reasoning behind that is, if you go back and you take a look at what Lance did during his time as a starting quarterback against the Arizona Cardinals and then against Houston, the 49ers weren't very good on third downs. They weren't very good on fourth downs either. In fact, in the game against Arizona, they're 3 of 11 on third down, 1 of 5 on fourth down. And then against Houston, they were 5 of 15 on third down, and didn't convert on their 1 fourth down attempt in that game against Houston. It's just a part of the game of Lance's game that we're going to have to keep an eye on. It's, he's a very fast runner. He's got some speed to him, but when he's on the field, it just doesn't seem like that's translating to this point. Maybe with another offseason under his belt and getting a little bit more feel for the flow and the rhythm of the offense, we'll see him be able to step up and help with picking those things up. And again, some of it goes back to the play calling as well. They're not doing the same things with Lance as they do with Garoppolo. So instead of on 2nd and 1 just running quarterback sneaks, a lot of times they're asking him to run read options and things like that, which help the defense with making those stops. Jumping over to the comment section, we have KW ask a good question here. He asks, how do you think Kyle's experience with coaching RG3 affect how he uses Lance? I don't foresee it changing all that much. I think a lot of what we saw with RG3 when they're in Washington, especially early on, was they utilized a lot of screens with him. very similar to what we saw them do with Jimmy Garoppolo. So it's already kind of like built into this offense. And it seems like with Lance, he's used him as more of a runner than he did with RG3, at least from what I was able to see on film from back in 2012. So I don't know if there's a whole lot of influence from one to the next. I think really when you start to look at Trey Lance and his development, I think we need to jump over to the question that came in shortly after this one from Paul. And he says, Jack, what do you think of Anthony Lynn? And this is really, I think, a hiring that was geared towards helping the running game, one, and helping Trey Lance, number two. Anthony Lynn during his time up in Buffalo as the offensive coordinator in 2016 was able to get that Buffalo Bills offense to really run the ball well. They were the number one rushing team in the league that year. They averaged over 5 yards a carry. Tyrod Taylor was the quarterback up there. Lynn took Taylor with him to San Diego. And then down in San Diego, we saw Lynn develop Justin Herbert into an NFL Rookie of the Year in 2020 with his offense there. So you look at what the 49ers are stepping into here in 2022. They're going to need to keep their running game strong, and they need, while also opening up their passing offense with this rookie quarterback. Lynn has shown an ability to do it, and I think that's a great hire for the 49ers. I think he's a really good coach, and there was a lot of talk about moving away from their tight end coach earlier in the week, John Embry, but this is a move that I think more than makes up for it. And it makes sense as to why they did what they did there. So the Anthony Lynn hiring is a really good one. And then Willie asks, can we let go of Raheem Mostert and sign Cordero Patterson? Okay, so this is a question actually that I would disagree with this. I would say that you want to keep Raheem Mostert. I would rather have Raheem Mostert than Cordero Patterson on my team. I like Cordero Patterson as an add-on type of piece if he's going to be like my fourth guy, maybe like if I was going to replace Jermichael Hasty or something like that. But I think the 49ers need to bring back Raheem Mostert on a deal somewhere between $2 to $3 million if they can get him to come back for that. The offense showed the need for an explosive back like Raheem Mostert, and that's why they were using Deebo Samuel in that role over the second half of the year. So I really think that Raheem Mostert would be the way to go. If you can bring Cordero Patterson in, like I said, the 49ers are going to have a need at wide receiver. So if you can bring Cordero Patterson in for a special teams role, throw him in there for maybe a play or two here or there, that's fine as well on offensive side. But I think he's a guy who I'm not sure if that's where the 49ers want to spend their money. I'd rather have Raheem Mostert than Cordero Patterson, based on the way that question was written. Let's see what else. USMC Niners for life says, Jack, do you believe that being the defense held the Rams to 20, that should have been a victory? My basis is the fact that we got the ball back with 146. At worst, we only needed a field goal. I get it. I get where you're going with this one, and I feel like this game was lost before that point, though, and it was lost partly on the defensive side and partly on the offense. The offense didn't get the first down when they needed to. The defense had an opportunity to get a turnover with a score of 17-14. And at that point, you get an interception. The game's not sealed because there's still a long way to go, but the 49ers are going to be able to drain off more clock, and who knows, they might move into field goal range themselves. And that would totally have changed the way the end of the game comes out. So they did a really good job holding them to 20. But at the same time, when you look through the numbers and you look through the fact that they allowed the Rams to run 76 plays and they had all those third down conversions, the defense wasn't quite as strong as the points allowed would seem to indicate. Do I foresee the offense going more through the running attack and wideouts, given the drop in Kittle's productivity and Lance's arm strength, allowing him to throw it deep more often? No, I don't. I think I think if anything, Lance's arm strength is going to increase Kittle's productivity, make his um, role in the offense that much bigger, especially if the running game is going, because that's when you have the running game going off of play action, that sucks up the linebackers, which then gets Kittle up to the second level against safeties, and he can work well in that area. So I think we're going to see the rushing attack go really well. I think you're going to see the productivity from Kittle as well as Brandon Ayuk take a jump once Trey Lance becomes the starting quarterback in 2020. Ken, thank you for the donation. He says Lance adds a deep element, but I think we get worse in consistency, especially in the quick short game. Hope he improves in that area. I hear you there. I think the thing for Lance is definitely he's going to add that deep element. That the consistency is going to be there. I think he just needs to continue to work through it and get the reps. I think you're going to see his consistency consistency pick up. He was a really good mid to short range thrower at North Dakota State. It was more of the deep game from 10 yards beyond that he struggled with. So the fact that it's kind of funny when we talk about Lance as being more of a deep thrower than an underneath thrower, that's not really what he showed in college on a regular basis. So I would look to see Lance being able to still add that deep element, those throws down the middle, like we saw Tim make to George Kittle in the game against the Texans, those throws along the sidelines, like he threw to Brandon Ayuk. You're going to see that kind of stuff come up, and it just seemed like throughout training camp, especially in the beginning, that he was making those plays on a regular basis. And I think now that he has a season under his belt, that's going to show up even more here in 2022, and hopefully it'll show up as a more consistent piece of his game. Adrian, hey, good to see you. Good to have you back. And same thing with Rocky Mountain Razorback. Good to have you back as well. I was not at the Adrian. I was not at the Senior Bowl. Didn't really get a chance to watch much of that this week, just with the 49ers coverage and trying to wrap up things from the season. With the 49ers actually playing as long as they did, the Senior Bowl kind of got lost this year compared to how it's been, for the most part over the last 5 years, where the 49ers have been out of it early. 3 of those last 5 this year having them play as deep as they did. The Senior Bowl kind of got pushed off to the back burner a little bit, but keep it locked into the channel, because there will definitely be some player breakdowns and things like that as we get into the off season and we start to get prepared for the draft, and discussions on who the 49ers might or might not take. Hey, JCK, this is assuming that Bosa and Debo both get their extensions. How do you see this affecting the rest of the team moving forward? I would say that I don't think that Bosa is going to get an extension this year. I think you're going to see Debo get an extension. He's going to get probably a 5-year deal added on to where he is now. So it's 5 years of new money, but a total of 6 to help spread out the cap hit over that time. And I don't think we're going to see it with Bosa, though. I think we're going to see the 49ers give Bosa a 5th-year option and then go to work on him next year, especially with the cap coming up and things like that. It'll buys them a little bit of time, and they can always restructure that 5th-year option going into that next season. So I think you'll see them lock him up on the 5th-year option this offseason, and then work towards a multi-year extension prior to 2023. And then as far as affecting the rest of the team moving forward, it's not going to hurt them in the short term, because they have a rookie contract at quarterback, which really helps them out. And then with the salary cap bumping up, that should help them to be able to absorb some of these bigger salaries as they come down the road. Because even a guy like Trey Lance, let's say they want to give him a big deal when his contract comes up in a few years, they can do all kinds of cap manipulations if they feel like he's worth it to be able to make it where his cap hit isn't that big. Look at what Kansas City did. They gave Mahomes like a $450 million deal or something like that, but his cap hit this year was only $2 million or some crazy low number like that. So there's lots of ways that they can get around it to make it work. Let's go back real quick to. I want to jump over to back to the mailbag question real quick. One of them was, who are some of the must re-sign players? Let me get that one up for you guys. So this is the priority re-signings. And so when I look at the 49ers roster and I'm looking at who I think they need to bring back, as far as their list of unrestricted free agents, my top priorities are going to be DJ Jones, Laken Tomlinson, Jaquaski Tart, Arden Key, and then Jordan Willis. I just feel like Jones, he was a stalwart along the 49ers defensive line in 2021. He's been a really good player from even in 2019 and 2020. This last year, he finished sixth with 56 tackles. He was second on the team in tackles for loss with 10. And then you throw in Key and Willis. They're key depth pieces along that defensive line that if they can bring those guys back, I think really help them out. And then over, with Laken Tomlinson is a guy who, this is an interesting one. It can go a lot of different directions, but he's led the offense in snaps played each of the last 3 seasons. So that he's provided some real stability there. But you also have to look at the fact that San Francisco drafted 2 offensive linemen last year in guard Aaron Banks and Jalen Moore, who can each play, especially Jalen Moore, he can play guard or tackle, whereas Banks is just going to be a guard. That may result in the 49ers being able to move on or choosing to move on from Tomlinson despite his ability to be on the field consistently. And then you look in the secondary, and the 49ers secondary is better when Tart's on the field. There's no doubt about it. The issue surrounding Tart has always been his ability to stay on the field. If you look at his injury history, Tart's injury history is very similar to that of Jimmy Garoppolo. He missed a lot of games in 2020, missed a lot of games in 2018. 2019 he was on the field a lot. In 2021 he was on the field a lot. And so it makes sense that the 49ers won a lot of games when he was out there. But how much are you willing to spend? And then also, they have Talanoa Hufanga already, who they may see as a long-term replacement, although I don't think he has the ability to play and be anywhere near Tart's level when it comes to being able to play up top in the defense and kind of play that single high safety role. That's not a spot that I'd like to see him in very often. So it'll be interesting to see how they play. Those are the 5 that I have from this year. And there's a bunch of guys who are exclusive rights free agents, guys like Juwan Jennings and so on and so forth, that I think are going to be brought back as well. I'm just looking at that as the guys that are unrestricted free agents that they're going to have to sign and compete with other teams for, because those exclusive rights free agents are stuck with them as long as they keep them going. Jake says, how's it going? Do you think Aaron Banks at right guard and Alfredo Gutierrez might be a possibility this next season? 2 linemen around 330 pounds. Yes, on Banks, I think that he's a possibility at right guard this season. As far as Alfredo Gutierrez, I don't think he's right there yet. I think you're going to have to look at him maybe spending another season on the practice squad this year to really get behind himself, geared up towards more of the game and the speed of the game and the way it's played in America. The leagues down in Mexico aren't quite the same as even the high college levels that we have out here in the United States. So I think he's a little bit behind on that, but he's definitely a very large man who moves well and is obviously learning quickly. Otherwise, they wouldn't have kept him around. So I would say with Gutierrez, he's a guy who would probably be on the practice squad throughout 2022. So maybe looking at him maybe being able to play a role in 23 or 24. So just a little ways down the road for him. Let's see what else we've got. Karthik says, do you think we will agree on a sentiment to trade Greenlaw and keep Aziz just from play last year and injury history? When you're looking at this, okay, what can you get back in return for Dre Greenlaw? Aziz Al-Shaair definitely showed that he can play last year. Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles played okay as well. I think the 49ers would look at their linebacker group and they would say that their best 3 linebackers that they can put on the field are going to be, and they're at their best when they have Warner in the middle and Greenlaw and Al-Shaair on either side of them. Not to take anything away from Flanagan-Fowles, he's a good backup, a really good linebacker who's growing. But I think you start with. I'm not sure if you're going to want to trade Dre Greenlaw But Aziz Al-Shaair is a really good linebacker. But it all starts with Fred Warner. As long as you have Fred Warner, those guys around him uh, don't have to be top level players. Which with Greenlaw, I'm not sure if you want to trade him. He's still relatively cheap, and for what you're getting out of him, and obviously he had the core injury this year that slowed him down. But I think Greenlaw is a guy that you're going to want to keep. I don't agree with moving on from Greenlaw this offseason. Yeah, Harold says Jennings is coming back, right? Yes, Jawan Jennings is an exclusive rights free agent, so he's the 49ers just need to offer him a contract, and he'll be with them for next year. So I would expect to definitely see Jawan Jennings come back in 2022. Do you think we should trade Mike McGlinchey and keep Tom Compton as the main role player? He held up pretty strong last year. Let him develop more. He knows the scheme. No, it's Mike McGlinchey. Tom Compton is a guy who he's been around the league for a while. He's a good role. Of these two, the guy that's a good role player is Tom Compton. He's a good backup, but I don't want Tom Compton being my starting right guard throughout 2022. If Mike McGlinchey is healthy and he's able to play, he's better than Compton. So that would be the direction that I would go there. So I'm not on the camp right now of trading McGlinchey. Plus, he's coming off of an injury. I'm not sure how many people are going to want to trade for a lineman who's coming off a torn quad muscle. So I don't think you're going to get back what you should, and I just don't think that they should move on from him. KW asks, which position should be the top priority in the draft, corner, safety, or edge? If I'm looking at this, I'm probably going to say that the top of these three that you're giving me, if you're looking at the second round and the 49ers aren't able to move up in the draft, they're sitting there at 29 with their first pick. I would say it's probably going to be safety over corner or edge. We'll have to see how this class shakes out. I haven't really looked at them too much, but I think safety is a little bit more of a need than corner or edge. It all depends on if they decide to move on from Samson Ebicom, if they can move on from him and save about $6 million on the cap, but at the same time, he's a pretty good edge player for them. And so you might want to stick with him there and go edge later on in the draft and start off with a safety, because if you're not bringing Tart back, I think you go safety earlier in the draft. Let's see what else. Yeah, slot cornerback is going to be an issue, Ken. K'Waun Williams, he's not going to be back next year. I don't believe he's a unrestricted free agent anyway. I don't think they're going to bring him back. I don't know if they'll be able to afford him. So that slot corner is definitely going to be a spot to look at. And you're going to have Diamador Lenore, I think, who might have been drafted to play that role. And then they're going to have to take a look at bringing somebody else in from the outside. So that's a spot that I think you might see get solved between Lenore and a free agent this offseason. Let's see what else. Hey, Kim. He says, which players this offseason will be renegotiating their contracts to get more cap space? And I would say that the top one for me with this is Eric Armstead. Eric Armstead's got a cap hit of $20 million, which is a pretty big number. It's going to be 23 the year after that. So I would think that they might want to might try to renegotiate his cap, get it down a little bit. Another one to keep an eye on with this would be Jimmy Ward. Ward's going, I believe he's going into his contract year. So if they could maybe re-sign him for another year or two, so make it a 2-year extension, giving him a total of 3, they can move some money around there as well. And Ward's a guy who's a big part of their secondary with the flexibility that he brings, the ability to play up top and then down in the box. Yeah, I disagree with this one a little bit, Michael. He says we have to get 2 great cornerbacks and 1 top 5 in the NFL. We can't and won't win without them. I don't agree with that. The 49ers have built from the inside out. That's their philosophy, and we've seen it work. As long as their quarterbacks have been healthy, This is a defense and a team that's performed at a pretty high level without having great cornerbacks on the roster. Uh, and I feel like the quarterback, if the quarterback in 2022 can come out and play the way that everybody expects him to play after being taken with the third pick last year, if he can come out and play like a top quarterback like they expect him to be, they'll be just fine with the cornerbacks that they have as long as they get the pass rush generated from their defensive linemen. That's the way that they build, and it's shown to work, right? Um, let's see where we are. That's a good question, Josh. When was the last time the 49ers have done a player-for-player trade? I I don't remember off the top of my head. Um, that might be part of the way that they do the Garoppolo trade, though. They might trade him for a player plus a pick, and uh, that would be something that'd be interesting to see them do. Swan Song, I think they need to draft. Good to see you, Swan. Says, I think they need to draft a tackle since we have no idea what McGlinchey will look like. Um, I think the 49ers are going to draft an offensive lineman. I think they need to look at center in particular, especially with Alex Mack's age. I think they need to find somebody that they can develop for that position. Uh, as far as Mike McGlinchey and the need to draft a tackle, uh, Jalen Moore, I think, can play that spot. I think he started there once this year. So I think Jalen Moore would be okay if that's who they have to go with there. Uh, Plus, they have Colton McKivitz. So they've got some good backups. It's a matter of, where are you going to go with Jalen Moore? What do you want him to be? Do you want him to be a guard? Do you want him to be a tackle? Do you want him just to be a swing tackle, swing offensive lineman as a backup, kind of a super guy that can come off and play anywhere across the board? Like, what is your long-term vision for Jalen Moore? And I think that's going to be interesting to keep an eye on, especially after they didn't even start him in Week 18 and went with Colton McKivitz over him. This was one of the questions that I had put up from the tweets that I received that I was going to get to, but since Karthik asks it, we'll go to it now. The thoughts on Verret and his offseason. When it comes to Jason Verrett, he's a guy who I like. He obviously had a really good season in 2020. The issue with Jason Verrett has never been his talent; it's been his ability to stay healthy, and he's been unable to do so. If the 49ers were to choose to bring Verrett in, I think you do it on a vet minimum deal, kind of like what you did with Jaquiski Tart. You bring him in on a prove it kind of a deal, no more than $2 million or something like that, really cheap. Let him fight and let him show that he can play. Let him try to beat out Ambry Thomas or Emmanuel Mosley, and as long as you have the depth behind it to absorb that, then it makes that kind of a signing go okay. It's when you sign a guy like Verret, but you don't know what you have behind them, that it gets a little tricky. And that was one of my main concerns with the 49ers heading into 2022. But as we saw, once Verret went down, they were able to make some moves. And again, going back to it, their roster building is to build from the front back. And even though they were dealing with Josh Norman and Diamador Lenore and a bunch of guys before they finally settled on Tom and Ambry Thomas into the season, they were still able to perform at a pretty good level on the defensive side of the ball. They're obviously at their best in the second half, and I think that was a lot due to the increased pass rush. Yes, keep Mostert 100%. This is I feel like if the 49ers can bring Mostert back on a short deal, 1-year deal, $3 million, $2 million in that range, and you have a backfield room consisting of Elijah Mitchell, Raheem Mostert, Trey Sermon, JaMychal Hasty, those four. That's a really good room. And then you're going to also have another 1 or 2 guys that are there on the team during training camp, because you can't just run those 4 guys into the ground. So you might have another 1 or 2 on the roster, and running backs are pretty easy to pick up as the season goes along as well, to fill in if need be. We saw them do that throughout the early part of this season. So I think I would try to bring Mostert back if I can. I think that helps out with Deebo Samuel and lets him be more of your wide receiver. Right. Let me jump over. KW says, thank you for the donation. Says, do you think the Farmers will target any high profile free agents? If so, what do you think they should target? And this is one that's tough because the 49ers don't at this point have a big amount of salary cap space. Right now they only have 5 million, I believe it is. That goes up to 30, right in the third round 30 when they make the trade finally with Garoppolo. So that gets them to 30. But they have so many positions that they need to fill. I think they still have like 20 players they need to fill plus their draft picks. So there's not a lot of cap space to work with. So when it comes to high profile free agents, I don't really foresee them going after any high profile guys. There might be, you might look at some of your high, not necessarily your high guys, but that middle of the pack guy who is really productive. That's going to be cost you somewhere in like $5 to $6 million range. That's about as high as I think you're going to see them go in the free agency market, unless they make some other maneuvers here where they're opening up cap space, like I said, with the restructure of Armstead or Ward or something like that. They definitely, if they're going to go and spend money, I think you're looking at spending money on a defensive tackle, or a slot corner is probably your two biggest, maybe safety. The 49ers definitely need to build up its center, though. So, yeah, and Adrian says, I think that resigning Mostert will depend if he still has that insane burst of speed. He is our deep threat in a way. Uh, yeah, that'll be interesting to see, right? I mean, he was coming off of a knee injury, I believe, coming into this season, and we saw that burst from Mostert on the two carries that he had this year before he got injured. I think they were both. I think one was 11 yards and the next one was 9 yards. So he definitely has that burst. I think he's going to have that burst. I think it's just a matter of he's a really good player who's never been able to show the ability to stay healthy with the pounding that it takes to play running back. His best season in 2019, he only touched the ball about 12 times a game, with a couple of games above that here and there. But I think that for the most part, Raheem Mostert as a part-time player would be really good for the 49ers and bring a lot of value to them. And then, like Dusty says, don't re-sign players with injury history. I agree and I disagree. I agree with it if you're re-signing that guy to be the starter, you don't do that. But if you have a guy with an injury history and you're re-signing him to come back and be a backup role where you have the depth behind them, if you want him to be the starter, but you have solid depth behind him, like you do at cornerback, then that's where you could bring back a guy like Jason Verrett, or, in the running back room with Raheem Mostert. Those are just the two names that pop up right in my head. Let's see. A lot of good comments though from you guys. Yeah, so let's bring up this one. So Don says Jimmy G going to Pittsburgh. That sure sounds like one that would work out well for both parties. Even if Pittsburgh goes out and drafts a quarterback this year at 20, I don't think that there's a quarterback that they're going to pick up at 20 that's going to give them the thing what they would get out of Jimmy Garoppolo in 2022. So I think Jimmy going to Pittsburgh would still make sense. And I would say, as far as compensation, if you can get a third in this season with a conditional second for the following year or a conditional third for the next year, I think that's a perfect number for the 49ers if they can get that. Let's see. Felipe says, we'll take a few more. We're going to go for about 5 more minutes. He says, Jack, I think we win 10 to 11 games next year with Trey. What do you think? I think you're right. I think it's right in that ballpark, 10, 11, right around that area. I think the 49ers are back in the playoffs. And, if the defense plays well and they get the running game going and those kind of things, I think you might even be better than 10 or 11. But I think that's the starting point, or what should be the starting point for the 49ers. Harold, thank you for the donation. With the hiring of Anthony Lynn, would any free agents be attracted to come and play for the 49ers? Just kind of think about who, Lynn spent 4 years with with the Chargers, so there's a running back. There was a running back there that I'm not sure where he's at now, but there might be a couple. I know the name that keeps getting thrown out with Lynn coming to the 49ers is Tyrod Taylor to come and be the backup quarterback for Trey Lance. That was actually one of the questions that I had here is who would be the ideal candidate for backing up Lance in 2022, and you kind of just led me into that one. I would say, a couple of names to think about there. Obviously, Tyrod Taylor would be one because of the relationship that he has with Anthony Lynn from their time together in Buffalo and in San Diego. But also, I would say take a look at Teddy Bridgewater, Andy Dalton, and Joe Flacco. Those are 3 names that the 49ers flirted with last year in free agency that they weren't able to get. They tried to get Dalton and Flacco. That didn't work out. They inquired with Carolina about trading for Bridgewater last offseason. So those are some names there. So again, Taylor, Bridgewater, Dalton, Flacco as backup candidates for Lance. All of them have history in the league and have that ability to kind of be a mentor for him. Another name to look at that I would throw out that hasn't been connected to the 49ers in the past would be Marcus Mariota. Another high draft pick who struggled but had some success in Tennessee. He's been a decent backup with the Raiders, so that would be a good fit, I think, for San Francisco as well. So there's 5 names to back him up, and I know the question was geared more towards other free agents, but I'm not sure if there's any that Lynn would attract as far him coming just as with his background. Let's see. Glenzer, thank you for the donation. He says, off topic, I know, but salary cap should be applied only to free agents, in my opinion. Teams shouldn't be limited on their draft picks. Yeah, well, the 49ers have, I see what you're saying. The 49ers will have about $30 million. About 10 of that's going to go to their draft. So they'll have about 20. They're probably going to end up with more than that because they'll do some restructures and things like that. But the salary cap is definitely a hard cap. It'd be interesting to see what the NFL would be like if they did a soft cap, like say the NBA, right, where you could go over it, but then there's penalties and taxes and things like that. That would be an interesting way of them doing it down the road. Harold says, 49ers future feels great. I believe the 49ers can make another playoff run this upcoming season. I agree. I do feel like the future is bright for the 49ers. This offseason is going to be very telling. It's been off to a pretty good start, though, with the hiring of Anthony Lynn. They brought back 11 players to reserve future contracts the other day. A couple of those might find their way onto the roster as well. Tanner Hudson at tight end being one of them. And overall, the future of this team looks good. You have Trey Lance at quarterback. You have Elijah Mitchell. You have Deebo Samuel, Brian Ayuk, George Kittle on your offensive side, Trent Williams. We'll see how that offensive line pans out as far as any changes there. On the defensive side, Nick Bosa. Everything builds around Bosa. Everything builds around Fred Warner on defense. And then on the secondary, you've got a really good starter in Jimmy Ward in the middle, so you're very strong up the middle on that defensive side, and you're not too bad in the secondary on the edges either. So overall, I think that this 49ers team has a pretty strong future, and it's going to be fun to cover them moving into the next year, and this offseason is going to be a good one to watch. Rocky Mountain Razorback, thanks for the donation, says, do you see the Niners being able to actually get any return for Jimmy? Seems like teams could play wait to force us to pay or cut Garoppolo. I think the 49ers are going to get something for Jimmy Garoppolo. Teams aren't going to want to wait and try to have to fight with other teams to get him. So that's why a middle. Think about this. I mean, I don't think that Jimmy Garoppolo is a worse quarterback than Carson Wentz. and Carson Wentz was able to fetch a third-round pick and a second-round pick for Philadelphia when they traded him to Indianapolis. So I think that's, if I was looking at Jimmy Garoppolo, I'd say that's kind of the starting point of what happens with any trade there. Let's see what else we got real quick. Then we're going to finish this up. Is this the Shawn Michaels from the WWE? I'm joking. He says the Niners should bring Julio Jones. What do you think? This was a conversation throughout last year, right? Julio Jones and that they should bring him in. I'm at the point where I don't think so. You re-sign Juwan Jennings. You have Deebo Samuel. You have Brandon Ayuk. You're going to have to bring in a tight end. So, everybody's going crazy over another receiver. Excuse me. Everybody's going crazy on Christian Watson from North Dakota State. He looked good on the film in 2019 and 2020. Obviously, looked good here this season, and really performed well at the Senior Bowl. Will he be around for the 49ers in the second or third round? Would they want to take a receiver at that point? I would say that would be an interesting piece. KW says, do the 49ers have a good shot at winning the division next year? Absolutely. They just need to be able to beat Arizona and beat Seattle. If they could beat those two teams, I think you're right there in the mix. 4-2 in the division probably wins it for you. And that's a number I think the 49ers can get to. Let's see, one last one. Let's see if there's any more good ones, and then we'll wrap this up for the day. I really appreciate you guys all jumping on and on a Saturday afternoon. It's interesting with there not being a football game for the rest of the year now with the 49ers. We got 6 months before the next one. I like this one from Dusty. Let's go with this one as the last one. He says, where do you play Hufanga? Linebacker, hitter, but a bit slow. I love Talanoa Hufanga as a box safety. Play him down there inside. I think it fits his style really well. You can rotate him to the back end every once in a while, but for the most part, you want him to play up in the box. I think that's where he's at his best. If he's really like your third or fourth linebacker coming down, I think that would be fantastic for the 49ers, and that's the direction to go. Yes, absolutely, Luke. Draft a center sometime in rounds 2 through 5. If you're going for center in round 2, that's likely you're making him your first pick. I don't see them doing that, but I would say that center is a position that they need to address in this draft class. So, all right. Thank you all very much. It's been almost 50 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and hit the road for today. I won't be on tomorrow. I'm going to be taking Sunday off. But I do want to say thank you to everybody who came on, and all your questions over here, the questions to the Twitter from throughout the week. If you follow me on Twitter or even if just on Twitter, go ahead and hit it's at @jackhammer_NFL. It's on my, you'll see it right there. There's always usually on Monday or Tuesday, I'll throw it out there, but just throw out questions throughout the week, even if you want to. Just throw me a question and I'll keep track of them, and we'll do this on a regular basis to get your questions answered. We'll come on here and talk about them in the comment section as well. So I just want to say thanks to everybody that joined. If you could do me a favor and hit the like button, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Hit that little bell notification so that you're alerted anytime we go live so that you don't miss any of the shows. That'd be fantastic. And then last but not least, get yourself over to 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. Make that one of your favorites on your homepage. Check it out on a regular basis. So thanks again. Have a great rest of your Saturday and a great weekend. I'll be back on Monday with Rob Shue for our Monday Hit. Take care, everybody.